The autumn rain drummed against the windshield as I sat in the passenger seat of Jake's beat-up Honda Civic, watching the suburbs blur past in streaks of orange streetlight and shadow. We'd been best friends since middle school, 7 years of shared secrets, stupid jokes, and the kind of friendship that felt as natural as breathing. Dude, you're seriously overthinking this, Jake said, glancing at me as he took a left turn toward his neighborhood. It's just one night. My parents are out of town, we'll order pizza, play some games, and you don't have to deal with your roommate's terrible music for once. I laughed, running a hand through my damp hair. I know, it's been a long time since we've done this. College has been insane. Exactly why you need this, he said, pulling into his driveway. The house was a two-story colonial I knew as well as my own childhood home. Besides, my brother's been asking about you. My stomach did a weird flip at the mention of Ethan. Jake's older brother had always been, well, complicated for me. 3 years older than us, Ethan had been the impossibly cool college guy when we were fumbling through high school. Now he was 24, working as a graphic designer and apparently still living at home while he saved up for his own place. Oh yeah, I tried to sound casual as we grabbed our bags from the trunk. Yeah, he mentioned you were looking good these days, Jake said with a smirk, which is his weird way of being friendly, I guess. The thing Jake didn't know, had never known, was that I'd harbored a massive crush on Ethan throughout most of high school. While Jake and I had come out to each other during our senior year in a midnight confession that had strengthened our friendship, I'd never mentioned that I'd spent countless sleepovers acutely aware of Ethan's presence down the hall, that I'd memorized the sound of his footsteps, the timbre of his laugh, the way he looked in sweatpants on lazy Saturday mornings. I'd assumed the crush would fade with time and distance. Apparently I was wrong. As we walked up to the front door, I tried to mentally prepare myself. It had been almost 6 months since I'd seen Ethan in person, last Easter when we'd exchanged maybe 10 words while passing dishes at dinner. I could handle this. I was 21 now, not some starry-eyed teenager. Jake unlocked the door and we stepped into the familiar warmth of his home. The living room was exactly as I remembered it. A comfortable couch facing a large TV, family photos on the walls, and the faint scent of vanilla candles that Jake's mom loved. "We're here," Jake called out, dropping his bag by the stairs. "Kitchen," came a voice that made my heart skip. I followed Jake through the dining room, trying to keep my expression neutral. Ethan was standing at the island counter, chopping vegetables with the kind of easy competence that seemed to characterize everything he did. He looked up when we entered, and I was struck all over again by how unfairly attractive he was. He'd always been good-looking, but the years had refined his features: sharp jawline, dark eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, dark hair that fell just slightly too long over his forehead. He was wearing a fitted navy t-shirt that showed off the results of what was clearly a consistent gym routine. "Hey man," Ethan said, his smile widening when his gaze landed on me. "Long time no see, Alex." "Hey Ethan," I managed, returning his smile. "How's it going?" "Can't complain, you guys hungry? I'm making stir-fry." Jake groaned appreciatively. "You're a saint, we were about to order pizza like the lazy college students we are." "I figured," Ethan said with a laugh. "Why don't you guys get settled upstairs? I'll call you when it's ready." As Jake led the way up to his room, I found myself hyper-aware that Ethan had watched me walk away. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. God, I needed to get a grip. Jake's room was a time capsule of our high school years mixed with evidence of his college life. Old concert posters alongside textbooks, his gaming setup taking up one corner, the same blue bedding he'd had for years. He flopped onto his bed while I took my usual spot in the bean-bag chair near the window. "So," Jake said, pulling out his phone, "we've got the whole weekend. What do you want to do? Besides, eat your brother's cooking and pretend we're not failing our midterms." "Exactly, besides that." We fell into easy conversation, catching up on everything we couldn't quite convey over text messages and sporadic FaceTime calls. Jake told me about the girl he was seeing, or trying to see. It was complicated, and I told him about the disaster that had been my attempt at joining the LGBTQ+ student organization. Not because the organization was bad, but because I developed a brief, intense crush on the president that had ended embarrassingly when I discovered he had a boyfriend. "You have the worst luck with guys," Jake said sympathetically. "Tell me about it. I'm starting to think I should just focus on school." Or, Jake said with a mischievous grin, you could actually try to meet someone instead of just pinning from afar. That's been your pattern since high school, dude. I threw a pillow at him, but he wasn't wrong. I'd never been good at making the first move, at putting myself out there. It was easier to admire from a distance to keep things safe and hypothetical. Food's ready, Ethan's voice carried up the stairs. We headed down to find the kitchen transformed. Ethan had set the island with 3 places and the stir-fry looked and smelled incredible: vegetables, chicken, rice noodles, everything tossed in a sauce that made my mouth water. Dude, you missed your calling, Jake said, immediately digging in. You should be a chef. And give up the glamorous world of freelance design? Never, Ethan said dryly, but he looked pleased. I took a bite and nearly moaned. It was delicious, perfectly balanced with just enough spice. This is amazing, I said. Thanks, Ethan said, and when our eyes met across the counter, something flickered in his expression that I couldn't quite read. I've been trying to up my cooking game, gets boring eating alone all the time. You should come visit us at school, Jake suggested. Alex and I would kill for home-cooked food. Maybe I will, Ethan said, and I could swear he was looking at me when he said it. The conversation flowed easily as we ate, covering everything from Ethan's latest design project to Jake's classes to my own struggles with organic chemistry. It felt natural, comfortable, and I found myself relaxing despite my earlier nerves. After dinner, Jake insisted on doing the dishes. You cooked, it's only fair, which left me standing in the kitchen with Ethan as he put away leftovers. So, Ethan said casually, Jake tells me you're thinking about switching majors. Yeah. I was surprised Jake had mentioned it. Maybe, I'm pre-med right now, but I'm not sure it's right for me. What would you switch to? Psychology maybe, I don't know, it feels like such a big decision. Ethan leaned against the counter, giving me his full attention in a way that made me feel both seen and slightly nervous. Can I give you some unsolicited advice? Sure. Don't choose something because it sounds impressive or because it's what you think you should do. Choose what actually makes you excited to learn, even when it's hard. Life's too short to spend it doing something you're not passionate about. There was something earnest in his voice, a hint of personal experience. I wondered if he was speaking from his own journey. Is that how you feel about design? I asked. His smile was slow, genuine. Yeah, actually, it took me a while to figure out, but yeah, even on the tough days, I love what I do. That's really cool, I said and meant it. You'll figure it out, he said. You're smart, and Jake's told me how hard you work. The fact that Jake talked about me to Ethan, that Ethan asked about me, sent a warm flush through my chest. Jake returned then, breaking the moment. All right, dishes are done, who wants to watch a movie? We ended up in the living room, sprawled across the couch with a horror movie none of us had seen playing on the TV. Jake claimed one end of the couch, I took the other, and Ethan settled in the middle, close enough that I was constantly aware of his presence. The movie was terrible in the best way, full of jump scares that had us all laughing and groaning. At one particularly ridiculous moment, I jumped hard enough that I nearly spilled the soda I'd been drinking. Ethan's hand shot out to steady it, his fingers briefly brushing mine. Easy there, he said with a grin, it's just a movie. Tell that to my heart rate, I muttered, trying to ignore the way his touch had sent electricity up my arm. As the movie progressed, I noticed Jake getting drowsy. He'd always been like this, could fall asleep anywhere, anytime, especially after a big meal. Sure enough, by the time the credits rolled, he was fully asleep, his head tilted back against the couch, mouth slightly open. Ethan and I exchanged amused looks. Should we wake him? I whispered. Nah, let him sleep. He'll wake up in an hour and drag himself to bed. Ethan stretched, his shirt riding up slightly to reveal a strip of toned stomach. I quickly looked away. Want to watch something else? I'm not really tired yet. I should have said no. I should have made an excuse, gone upstairs to Jake's room and maintained a safe distance. Instead, I heard myself say, sure. Ethan scrolled through the options, finally settling on a documentary about deep-sea creatures. We adjusted our positions on the couch, and somehow we ended up closer than before, Jake's sleeping form at one end while Ethan and I occupied the other side. The documentary was actually fascinating, but I found it increasingly hard to focus. I was so aware of Ethan beside me, the warmth of him, the occasional brush of his arm against mine, the way he'd lean over to comment on something on screen. "This is wild," he said during a segment about bioluminescent jellyfish. "It's like an alien planet down there." "Have you ever been scuba diving?" I asked. "Once in Mexico, it was incredible. You?" "No, but I've always wanted to try." "You should," he said, turning to look at me. In the dim light from the TV, his eyes were dark and unreadable. "I think you'd love it. There's something about being underwater, it's like the rest of the world just stops." There was an intensity to the moment that had nothing to do with the documentary. The air between us felt charged, heavy with something unspoken. My mouth went dry. "Ethan," I started, not sure what I was going to say. His phone buzzed, breaking the spell. He glanced at it and sighed. "Sorry, work email. I should probably respond to this. Do you mind if I?" "No, of course not. Go ahead." He stood, giving me an apologetic smile. "I'll be back in a few. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen if you want a snack." After he left, I sat there trying to calm my racing heart. What had that been? Had I imagined the tension, the way he'd been looking at me, or was I just projecting my old crush onto innocent friendliness? I looked over at Jake, still sleeping peacefully, my best friend who had no idea that I'd spent years nursing feelings for his brother. The guilt was familiar, an old companion. I pulled out my phone, scrolling mindlessly through social media to distract myself. I was still sitting there 20 minutes later when Ethan returned. "Sorry about that," he said. "Client needed some last-minute changes to a project." "No worries, I should probably head up to bed anyway," I said, even though I wasn't particularly tired. "Yeah, probably a good idea." He moved to Jake, gently shaking his shoulder. "Hey man, time for bed." Jake stirred, blinking groggily. "What time is it?" "Almost midnight. Come on, let's get you upstairs." We managed to guide a half-asleep Jake up to his room, where he immediately collapsed onto his bed, not even bothering to get under the covers. I grabbed a blanket and threw it over him. "He's going to regret sleeping in his jeans," I said quietly. Ethan chuckled. "His problem. Do you need anything? Extra blankets, pillows?" Jake's room had a second bed, more like an extra-long twin that had been my usual sleeping spot during high school. It was already made up with fresh sheets. "No, I'm good, thanks." We stood there in the doorway, the only light coming from the hallway behind us. Ethan's face was half in shadow, but I could feel him looking at me. "It's really good to see you, Alex," he said softly. "I know Jake said this, but you should come around more often. You're always welcome here." "Thanks, Ethan, that means a lot." "Night," he said, and for a moment I thought he might say something else. But then he just smiled and headed down the hall to his own room. I got ready for bed in a daze, brushing my teeth in the bathroom I'd used countless times, changing into sleep clothes, trying not to overthink every interaction from the evening. But as I lay in the dark, listening to Jake's soft snoring from across the room, I couldn't stop replaying the moment on the couch, the way Ethan had looked at me, the warmth in his voice when he said I should visit more often. This was going to be a long night. I don't know how long I lay there, staring at the ceiling and watching shadows shift as cars passed on the street outside. Sleep felt impossible. My mind kept circling back to Ethan, to every glance and word and moment between us, analyzing them until they lost all meaning. Finally, around 1:30 in the morning, I gave up. Maybe some water and a change of scenery would help settle my restless thoughts. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could, grateful that Jake was a heavy sleeper, and made my way downstairs in my t-shirt and pajama pants. The house was dark except for a light coming from the kitchen. I froze at the bottom of the stairs. Someone was still up. I should have turned around, gone back to bed. Instead, I found myself padding silently toward the kitchen. Ethan was sitting at the island counter with a laptop open in front of him, bathed in the blue-white glow of the screen. He was wearing glasses. I'd forgotten he wore them sometimes, and had changed into a worn gray t-shirt. He looked up when I entered, surprise crossing his face. "Hey," he said, pulling off the glasses. "Can't sleep." "Yeah," I admitted, "my brain won't shut off. You?" "Work stuff. Sometimes it's easier to just get it done than to lie there thinking about it." He gestured to the seat beside him. "Want some company?" Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to make an excuse and leave. Instead, I sat down. Want something to drink? Ethan asked. I was about to make tea. Sure. I watched as he moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity, filling a kettle, pulling down mugs, selecting tea bags from a wooden box. His movements were graceful, economical, and I found myself mesmerized by something as simple as the way his hands worked. So what's keeping you up? He asked as he set the kettle to boil. School stress. Partly just a lot on my mind, I guess. He leaned against the counter, giving me that same focused attention from earlier. Want to talk about it? I really shouldn't, but something about the late hour, the quiet house, the soft kitchen light, it loosened my usual careful control. Do you ever feel like you're living the life you think you should live instead of the life you actually want? I asked. Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. Yeah, he said finally, I felt like that for a long time actually. Really? He nodded. When I was in college, I was studying business because it seemed practical, because my parents thought it was a good idea. I was miserable, but I kept telling myself it would be worth it, that I just needed to push through. He paused as the kettle began to whistle, pouring water over the tea bags. It wasn't until my junior year that I finally admitted to myself that I hated it, that I wanted to do something creative. What made you finally change? Therapy, actually, he said with a slight smile, bringing the mugs over and sitting beside me. I was having panic attacks, not sleeping. My roommate at the time basically dragged me to the campus counseling center. Talking to someone helped me realize that I was living according to someone else's script. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, breathing in the chamomile scent. That sounds really hard. It was. Telling my parents I was switching majors felt like the end of the world at the time, but they came around eventually, and even if they hadn't, he looked at me intently, I would have been making decisions for my life, not theirs. Is that why you're still living at home? Because things are weird with them? No, actually, we're good now. I'm just here temporarily while I save up. The freelance design work is going well, but building a client base takes time. Should have my own place by next year. We fell into a comfortable silence, sipping our tea. The kitchen felt like a pocket universe, separate from the rest of the world. Can I ask you something? Ethan said after a while. Sure. Are you happy, overall, with how things are going? It was such a simple question, but it hit me harder than I expected. Was I happy? I had a best friend I loved, I was doing okay in school, and I was out and comfortable with my sexuality, but there was still something missing, some fundamental sense of living authentically. I think I'm working on it, I said finally. Being happy, still figuring out what that looks like for me. That's honest, Ethan said, I respect that. What about you, are you happy? He considered this, a slight smile playing at his lips. Getting there are some things I'm still working on. Like what? His eyes met mine, and there was something vulnerable in them that I'd never seen before. Like being brave enough to go after what I want instead of always playing it safe. My heart was pounding again, the air felt thick with unspoken things. That's scary, I said quietly. Terrifying, he agreed, but I'm starting to think that the regret of not trying might be worse than the fear. We were sitting so close now that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could count his eyelashes if I wanted to. I knew I should look away, should put distance between us, but I couldn't make myself move. Alex, he said, his voice low, can I be honest with you about something? Okay, I breathed. Jake's told me a lot about you over the years, about how good a friend you've been to him, about your life, what you're interested in. And every time he talks about you, I find myself wanting to know more, wanting to talk to you myself instead of just hearing about you secondhand. My mouth had gone completely dry. Why didn't you? Because you're my little brother's best friend, because there's an age gap, because I wasn't sure. He trailed off, then started again. Earlier tonight on the couch he stopped, seeming to think better of it. I'm probably way out of line even saying this much. You're not, I heard myself say, out of line, His eyes searched my face. No. I've had a crush on you since I was 15, Ethan. The words were out before I could stop them, years of careful secret-keeping evaporating in an instant. I watched in shock, then something else, something warm and wondering, crossed his face. You did. Do, I corrected, my heart hammering, present tense. Jesus, Alex, he ran a hand through his hair, looking dazed. I had no idea, all those times you were here, all those sleepovers. I got pretty good at hiding it. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you were Jake's older brother, because you were straight, or at least I thought you were, because I was a stupid kid and you were in college. Pick a reason. He laughed, the sound slightly breathless. I'm not straight. My brain momentarily short-circuited. What? I'm not straight, he repeated, looking almost shy now. I'm bi, have been for, God, I don't even know how long. I just didn't really talk about it much, especially not to Jake. He doesn't know. No, it's not that I'm hiding it exactly, it just never seemed relevant to bring up. I haven't dated much in the past few years, been focused on other things. But Alex, he shifted closer and I could barely breathe. I'm telling you now because I need you to understand that this, he gestured between us, this isn't one-sided. It's not. God, no, why do you think I've been asking Jake about you, trying to find excuses to talk to you when you visit? Why do you think I made dinner tonight, stayed up watching movies with you guys? His hand came up, hesitating just shy of touching my face. Can I? I nodded, not trusting my voice. His fingers traced along my jaw, feather-light, and I shivered. His touch was electric, every nerve ending in my body suddenly attuned to that single point of contact. We should probably talk about this, he said, even as his thumb brushed my cheek, about what it would mean, the complications. Or, I said, surprised by my own boldness, we could stop overthinking it. His smile was beautiful, transformative. Yeah. Yeah. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. When his lips met mine, it was gentle at first, testing. But when I responded, when my hand came up to curl into his shirt, the kiss deepened. It was everything I'd imagined and nothing as I'd expected. Better, real. His mouth was warm and tasted like chamomile tea, and the soft sound he made when I opened to him sent heat pooling in my stomach. We broke apart after a moment, or maybe it was an eternity. Time had become meaningless, both breathing hard. Wow, I said eloquently. Yeah, he agreed, his forehead resting against mine. Wow. This is really happening. Seems like it, he pulled back slightly to look at me, his expression serious now. But we should talk about Jake, he's going to have opinions about this. Reality crashed back in. Jake, my best friend, Ethan's little brother. The person sleeping upstairs had no idea his brother had just kissed me in the kitchen. Oh God, I said, Jake. We don't have to tell him right now, Ethan said quickly. I'm not suggesting we hide it forever, but maybe we figure out what this is first, make sure it's something real before we potentially complicate his relationships with both of us. It was the practical thing to do, and yet guilt already gnawed at me. Jake and I had always been honest with each other. I've never kept secrets from him, I said. I know, and I'm not asking you to lie. If he asks you directly, tell him the truth, but maybe we can just have this weekend, see how we feel, and then we'll talk to him together. I thought about it, weighing loyalty against possibility. Okay, I said finally, but we'll tell him soon. I don't want to be the friend who sneaks around behind his back. Agreed, soon. Ethan's hand found mine on the counter, lacing our fingers together. For what it's worth, I think Jake will be okay with this. He might be weird about it at first, but he loves both of us. He'll come around. I hope you're right. We sat there for a while longer, hands intertwined, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. He told me about his coming out process, the handful of relationships he'd had, and his uncertainties about the future. I told him about the loneliness of college, about feeling like I was searching for something I couldn't name, about the terror and exhilaration of living authentically. It was the kind of conversation you can only have at 2 in the morning when the world is reduced to two people and the space between them. Finally, reluctantly, we acknowledged that we should probably sleep. Can I see you tomorrow? Ethan asked as we rinsed our mugs. I mean, obviously I'll see you because you're here, but can I actually see you? Maybe we could go somewhere, just the two of us. Yeah. What about Jake? He mentioned wanting to visit that girl he's seeing tomorrow afternoon. We could do something while he's gone. Okay, I said, unable to stop smiling. Yeah, I'd like that. At the bottom of the stairs, we paused. Ethan's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. I'm really glad you came this weekend, he said softly. Me too. He kissed me again, slow and sweet, and I melted into it. When we finally pulled apart, he was grinning. Get some sleep, Alex. You too. I practically floated back to Jake's room, slipping into bed with my heart still racing. Jake was still asleep, oblivious to the fact that his best friend had just made out with his brother in the kitchen. As I lay there in the dark, I felt a complex tangle of emotions: joy, anxiety, anticipation, guilt. But underneath it all was something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The sense that maybe, just maybe, I was finally allowing myself to reach for what I actually wanted instead of what felt safe. Sleep finally came, and with it, dreams of dark eyes and gentle hands and possibilities I'd never let myself imagine before. I woke to sunlight streaming through Jake's window and the sound of him moving around the room. For a moment, I was disoriented, caught between dreams and reality. Then it all came rushing back: the late-night conversation with Ethan, the confession, the kiss. The kiss. I must have made some sound because Jake turned to look at me. "Oh, good you're alive," he said cheerfully. "I was starting to think you'd sleep all day." I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. It was almost 10 o'clock. "Why didn't you wake me?" "Dude, you looked dead to the world, plus I figured you needed it." He pulled a shirt over his head. "I'm going to grab breakfast. Want anything?" "I'll come down," I said, sitting up and trying to arrange my face into something normal. "Cool, just so you know, I'm probably going to head out around 1. Sarah, you remember me telling you about Sarah, wants me to come over." "That's fine," I said, probably too quickly. "I'll just hang out here." "Ethan said he'd keep you company," Jake said, pulling on his shoes. "Apparently he's got the day off and feels bad about ditching you." I tried to keep my expression neutral. "That's nice of him." "Yeah, he's been weirdly helpful this weekend. Maybe having you here makes him nostalgic for the days when I had friends over all the time." Jake grinned. "Come on, I'm starving." We headed downstairs to find Ethan already in the kitchen, making pancakes. He looked up when we entered, and for a brief second our eyes met. The intensity of the look sent a flash of heat through me. "Morning," he said casually, as if he hadn't been kissing me in this very room just hours ago. "Thought you guys might want breakfast." "You're the best brother ever," Jake declared, immediately stealing a pancake from the serving plate. "Hey, those are still cooking," Ethan started, but Jake had already taken a bite. "So good," Jake said through a mouthful of pancake. I couldn't help but laugh at the exasperated look on Ethan's face. He caught my eye and rolled his own, a private moment of shared amusement that made my chest feel warm. "There's coffee too," Ethan said, gesturing to the pot, "and orange juice in the fridge." I busied myself with getting coffee, trying to act normal while acutely aware of every movement Ethan made. When I turned around, he was plating pancakes, his back to Jake, and he shot me a quick, private smile that made my stomach flip. This was going to be harder than I thought, pretending nothing had changed when everything felt different. Breakfast was a surprisingly easy affair. Jake dominated the conversation, telling us about Sarah and their complicated relationship status, while Ethan and I listened and occasionally offered commentary. But I kept catching these little moments: the brush of Ethan's knee against mine under the table, the way his gaze would linger on me when Jake wasn't looking, the slight smile that played at his lips whenever our eyes met. "So anyway," Jake said, checking his phone, "I should probably get ready to head out soon. Alex, you sure you're cool with hanging here?" "Yeah, definitely, go spend time with Sarah." "Thanks man, Ethan, you'll make sure he doesn't get bored." "I think I can manage that," Ethan said, and there was something in his tone that made me need to take a sip of coffee to hide my expression. After breakfast, Jake went upstairs to get ready, leaving Ethan and me alone to clean up. "So," Ethan said quietly as he rinsed dishes, "about today, I was thinking we could get out of the house for a bit. There's this park about 20 minutes away, trails, pretty views, usually not too crowded. We could talk without worrying about Jake walking in." "That sounds good," I said, loading plates into the dishwasher. He turned to me, water still dripping from his hands. "You okay with all of this?" "Yeah," I said, meaning it. "I'm good, a little nervous about Jake finding out, but good." "We'll tell him soon," Ethan promised. "This weekend or early next week at the latest. I don't want you to feel like you're lying to him." Jake clattered back down the stairs then, dressed and ready to go. All right, I'm out. Alex, text me if you need anything. Ethan, don't let him die of boredom. I'll do my best, Ethan said solemnly. We walked Jake to the door, waving as he pulled out of the driveway. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Suddenly, we were alone, really alone, and all the careful casualness evaporated. Hi, I said, turning to face Ethan. Hi, he replied, stepping closer, so that wasn't too weird. Eating pancakes while secretly thinking about kissing you? No, totally normal Saturday morning. He laughed, his hands coming to rest on my hips. Wanna skip straight to the kissing part? Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us, rising on my toes to press my lips to his. He made a soft, pleased sound, pulling me closer. This kiss was different from last night's, less tentative, more certain. His hands slid under my shirt, warm against my skin, and I shivered. Bedroom, he murmured against my mouth. Probably a good idea. We made it as far as the couch before we got distracted again. I ended up on his lap, his hands in my hair, kissing him like I'd been starving for it, which, in a way, I had been, years of wanting distilled into this moment. Alex, he breathed, pulling back slightly. His lips were swollen, his eyes dark. We should probably talk before we get too carried away. Do we have to? I asked, which made him laugh. Yeah, I think so, come on. We rearranged ourselves so we were sitting side by side, still close but no longer quite so tangled together. My heart was pounding, my skin still tingling from his touch. So Ethan said, taking my hand, I know we said we'd see how this weekend goes, but I want to be clear about something. I'm not looking for just a hookup here. I like you, Alex, I have for a while, and I want to see where this could go if you're interested in that. I am, I said immediately, definitely interested in that. Good, he smiled, squeezing my hand, but we need to be smart about this. There's Jake to consider. Thanks for watching.